that if during this period of time no deal is made, we have our eyes on key targets. If there is no deal, we are going to hit each and every one of their electric generating plants very hard and probably simultaneously. We have not hit their oil, even though that's the easiest target of all, because it would not give them even a small chance of survival or rebuilding. But we could hit it, and it would be gone, and there's not a thing they could do about it.
President Trump giving an update on Operation Epic Fury for the entire nation last night, threatening to strike Iran's power plants if no peace deal is reached and bomb the country, quote, into the Stone Age, sending stocks lower, oil prices soaring. But those losses in check as we speak, as we head into the afternoon. Welcome back to the second hour of the Big Money Show. I'm Dagan McDowell, along with my marvelous co-host, and with us for this hour, Endeavor PAC founder Tiffany Smiley. Before we move on to what the president said about the conflict in Iran last night, he was making some news, as he always does, that has just broken. Pam Bondi fired by the president as the Attorney General. And the reports are that Todd Blanche, who has been his longtime counsel, is going to be replacing her as the Attorney General of the United States. As we dig into this, Jackie, you were reading about it as we were in the commercial break.
Yeah, I'm dying to know what happened. My understanding from the reporting from Fox News Digital is that it happened last night before the president's address to the nation, and that she was on her way back to Florida while the president was speaking. Obviously, when something like this happens, the president has come out many, many times praising Pam Bondi, and so I'm wondering what exactly it was that led him to this decision, that it was time for her not to be a part of the cabinet.
This is my take. She, from the get-go, royally fouled up the release of the Jeffrey Epstein documents, and it was just such a rolling disaster all year and was handled so poorly that that was one of the biggest problems, despite her obvious loyalty and her background. But she met with President Trump, according to Fox News Digital, in the Oval Office on Wednesday night ahead of the speech to the nation on Iran, and she was reportedly informed of her ouster. She was with him, though, in front of the Supreme Court yesterday.
Oh, yes, sorry, she was.
And then she got the you can go.
She was supposed to be deposed by a House committee later this month, wasn't she? Wasn't she subpoenaed by a House committee on the Epstein files? I think so. I don't know if maybe that doesn't happen now. Maybe it does if she's not in this role. The Epstein files are not my issue du jour, but my sense watching that throughout was there were these big promises. Tiffany, maybe this is something you watch more closely. Big promises of information, and then it always seemed like it was a dud.
Yeah.
Nothing happened. And people were like, wait a second, we thought we were going to get transparency. It feels like we're just getting obfuscation. Maybe I read that wrong, but that was my perception of it.
Yeah, and I mean, it's a tough job. Pam Bondi was in a very, very hard position, and you have to wonder what was actually going on behind the scenes. Yes, she is the leader. She's the face of it. But what was she being directed to do, and what information did she have access to? I will commend her. She's a patriot. She has been on the front lines for many, many years fighting for America and has extreme loyalty. So I thank her for her service and stepping into that role and doing the best that she could in the time and in the moment that it called for. And it's a tough job, and it's President Trump obviously feels like it is time to move on and bring in someone else for the administration.
I was just going to say, given what, so Todd Blanche, who is the Deputy Attorney General of the U.S., previously a criminal defense attorney, worked very closely with President Trump in 3 of the criminal cases, the legal warfare that was targeting President Trump. Todd Blanche will be the interim Attorney General based on the reporting. We will see who potentially is nominated for the job full time. But the Attorney General role for the president is so personal and critical not just for the nation, but given what happened with Jeff Sessions, which opened the door when he recused himself, idiot, and opened the door for the Mueller investigation, the Russia collusion, hoax, all of it. That's one of the most important jobs. And also for enforcing the laws of the land and fighting crime and righting all the wrongs of the Biden administration and just the bad cops who are still living and working inside.
Well, my thought goes to the whole fraud push too right now, and how much people are asking for prosecutions on that. That's the AG is going to help push that, along with Vice President J.D. Vance's task force.
I just wonder on the Epstein side of it, like you, Brian, I wasn't in the weeds of it because there was so much other stuff that was happening news-wise. But we did eventually get the documents, or most of them, that she promised. Is the issue that she didn't put them out there soon enough? I mean, when you start to look and peel back the layers of what was involved in those documents, I know that, there's a need for the American people to have transparency, but it's also, extremely sensitive information. Also, there was a period where I think victim sensitivity was an issue. And so to your point of it being a hard job, you want to serve the public interest, but you also are making decisions that impact people along the way. And in some ways, that's a thankless job because it's just so difficult to do.
Yeah, and they were scouring thousands and thousands and thousands of records. That takes time, and it takes precision, and it takes absolute perfect execution. They couldn't just openly release it. There are victims in there. There were other people in that needed to be protected, and so she was doing that exactly to your point. And maybe the public just didn't understand. They want it now. If they want it now, they want it now.
And the Democrats were, pushing it and going hard and saying Trump's going to be in there, and they're covering it up, and they made it a whole thing.
A whole narrative.
But so did Republicans, because the committee that voted to subpoena Bondi included Nancy Mace, Lauren Boebert, Tim Burchett, Michael Cloud, Scott Perry. So it was a bipartisan issue. And I wonder if she was supposed to testify or be deposed, I guess. It was April 14th. I think that was sort of a gathering cloud that maybe Trump didn't. Maybe it's still going to happen. I don't know. I don't know if the subpoena doesn't go away, but it was becoming a big bipartisan issue in some ways.
The Attorney General role is critical from a business perspective, and you mentioned the fraud investigations for a nation that's so deep in debt. To make sure that that our money, our borrowed money, is not stolen, misused, abused, but also to ensure that there is fairness in our legal system when it was used for political warfare. The Department of Justice was used for political warfare to go after a former president, a presidential candidate, and anyone that they didn't like who was on the right. And that is a fair justice system is the only way that you can operate a business in the United States.
And Susan Rice is already saying they want to do it again. They're already thinking about who they'll go after when they do have power next time.
There are several reports from different publications that President Trump on Tuesday met with Lee Zeldin, former congressman, currently boss of the EPA. He was discussing last year's California wildfires, and he also just discussed, according to reports, the potential for tapping him for the Attorney General role. That's according to reports. And our own Aisha Hasni on the news channel actually spoke with Pam Bondi just a short while ago. She said she was working in Florida filming a PSA about abducted children and for the NFL, and she flew into Tampa this morning and went straight to work. So no comment on the firing. Let's go to Edward Lawrence, who's at the White House with more. Hey, Edward, what do you know?
Yeah, Hey, Dagan, I can add a little color to this. I was actually in the office there when President Trump spoke with our Peter Doocy on the Fox News side related to this. Now, the president wanted to stress, basically, there's no bad blood between the two of them. They just decided, or he decided, that Pam Bondi would be better in another role on this. She is okay with the decision, as far as the president has said on this. And as you know, Todd Blanche, the number 2, currently will be the interim Attorney General. There's no decision yet. The president did not decide who permanently will replace Pam Bondi, but at the moment, Todd Blanche will be the interim member of that running the Attorney General's office. So again, the president's stressing this is just moving to another role within the administration. He felt that it was time to do that. She ended up taking, as much incoming bad press as he did on a number of the subjects, especially when you talk about the release of the Epstein files, when you talk about some of the other things that she did. But she was in lockstep with President Donald Trump with all of his agenda items going forward from the moment she took office as Attorney General. But again, this is being described now as just moving her to another role, but there's no bad blood between the two of them. As you reported there, to Aisha Hasni saying that Pam Bondi is back to work today, down filming a PSA for the NFL. Back to you guys.
And Edward, but any other, just you're covering the White House so closely, why now? Why send her out of the AG role now? And to your point, Kristi Noem, not the head of DHS any longer. That's Mark Wayne Mullen as the secretary, but she's still within the fold in the administration, just in a new position that the president created. But why now for AG Bondi, former AG Bondi?
And this has been talked about for several weeks or so, is my understanding, about possibly there could be a move in role related to this. Is there a trigger that it's why now? I don't think that we have seen one as of yet, and you'd have to ask the president, which he did not indicate why exactly now is the time. But this has been sort of talked about to move her into another role related to this. Again, not a firing. The president's describing this as just moving her to another role. So she's still within the fold, as you mentioned, of the administration. But there wasn't one trigger that did it. Now, we know with Kristi Noem's situation, there was a lot of hubbub behind the scenes, and she had some issues, publicly issues, with some of the folks on her staff related to getting upset about a pilot leaving a blanket or someone leaving a blanket on a helicopter. So there were triggers for that sort of removal from office. This one, there isn't just one trigger that said, okay, now is the time. But this, again, it had been talked about.
Oh, and with Noem, you left out the more than $2 million that she spent on a ad campaign. And then when questioned by Senator Kennedy if the president knew about it, she said yes. And that was the final straw with that one. But there's more to come on that as I think Congress looks into where that money went. Ed, great to see you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Dagan.
Yeah. Who wants him?
I'll just quickly point out, I think what I liked that I heard from Edward is that there isn't bad blood. I think Trump and the president in the past has said Attorney General Pam Bondi, former, has been a wonderful person and is doing a good job. And so I like to see sort of those positive words continue. Also, as I sit here and I think that we're 14 and 15 months into the second term, I've said this before, I went to the polls for Doge. I went to the polls to cut the crap, and I think a lot of people feel, Brian, to your point on the waste, fraud, and abuse, need to see more prosecutions when it comes to all of the fraud. Need to see more rule of law come back, and potentially it just felt like maybe the progress wasn't moving fast enough.
But I'll just say this one thing, and I agree with you on all the fraud stuff. You get another second chance within the Trump administration. Seems to be sort of like a Trump 2.0, more benevolent way of doing things than just, booting people out. I mean, I can't remember exactly what Kristi Noem is doing, but it's certainly not of the same significance.
Is it the Shield of America or something?
Yeah, I'm curious to see what role Pam Bondi will get. Remember Kimberly Guilfoyle, when she was not engaged to his son anymore, she got the ambassador role to Greece. Everybody gets like something second, kind of.
Do you think, though, I know we got to go, but do you think sometimes it's nice to see people moved on? And I understand, it's not, the bad blood thing. Biden never moved anybody on. He had terrible cabinet members who he kept forever, who wrecked the country. And I like that we have a chief executive who, doesn't have to be bad blood, but it's just, we're not getting done what I need to get done. I need somebody else. I'm going to move you along. And I think that's important. And I think it's not an entitlement to have these jobs. And Americans demand
have to
results.
earn it.
You have to earn it. If
Every
you're not getting
day.
results, you got to move somebody on. And I kind of like that, actually. I don't need to see bad blood, but I think it's good for the chief executive to manage his team for results.
And it shows that she had the full confidence of the president, and maybe the refocus now is going after the waste, fraud, and abuse, and you just simply can't do that with the same person. And so she served, and she served wonderfully under the pleasure of the president, and I think it's a good move for our country, perhaps, to your point, Dagan. Like, let's get serious about what this role is about and focus on those areas that we need to, waste, fraud, and abuse, and prosecuting people and getting our money back.
Well, one indelible image is the influencers with the big white Epstein binders, which happened early last year. That was embarrassing because there was nothing new in them. And then you get this groundswell of where are the, and it just was not good. And Pam Bondi out as Attorney General. More after this.